Hello everyone and welcome to episode 15 of Wrestle Culture. I am joined by the delightful Kenny McIntosh and we're being filmed. It's a rare one-off filmed Wrestle Culture. Hello Kenny, are you there?
I'm here, Adam. How are you? Should we do a handshake here? Yeah, this is a weird show because usually we do all this stuff where we make fun of each other and we do all that sort of stuff. But this, I don't really feel like doing that today. It's not really the day to do it. It's more because we are, as I put out a tweet about, knowing how Julia Roberts felt sleeping with the enemy because I'm sharing a hotel room with Adam Blompier. I woke up this morning at like 7 o'clock and woke up to the really sad news that Chyna has passed away at age 45. And it kind of hit me harder than I thought it was going to hit me. I didn't expect it. And I feel really bad for her because I think she's genuinely a nice person by all accounts, very troubled person, but really a legendary figure in wrestling that doesn't really get her due. So I'm happy that today we can do a tribute Wrestle Culture podcast to Chyna.
Absolutely.
And,
It's sad that like a lot of like all the kind of tweets that were going out, all the kind of like tributes to her, they all come with that little kind of caveat, troubled is the word that everyone kind of uses. And it's not like it's wrong, but it's just such a shame that someone who is instantly iconic, such a legend with such a legacy, is you kind of have to wade through that.
There's a lot to wade through. I think the sad thing is that for the last kind of 12 months, because for people who weren't aware, just a bit of backstory is Chyna in the last couple of years, or Joanie Laurer, whatever you want to call her, has been living in Japan. She was teaching English, by all accounts leading quite a happy life. And then she made the decision last year to come back to the States to film a documentary called The Reconstruction of China. And the aim of the whole thing was, at the end of it, is that she wanted to reconnect with WWE. She wanted her achievements recognized by the company. And
there was this very sad tweet that 2 weeks ago she tweeted from her main Twitter account that she, was one of, it's her dream to be, not be back in WWE, but to kind of rebuild her relationship with that company and kind of put everything at peace and, just try and get everything back on track, as you say. And then here we are.
And the sad thing is that it's taken her death to make that happen, because now they are recognizing her now. And the thing is, I don't want to make this like a WWE bashing thing, because I think it's very complicated in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And I think that Triple H did the podcast with Steve Austin about a year ago. I think it was February last year, where Austin mentioned Chyna going in the Hall of Fame, and Triple H said, if kids Google her, what do they see? I think I understand it. I'm not saying it's fair, because you can bring the Sonny argument up.
Thing is, I don't. It is a reason, but I don't think it's the whole reason. I think it's the reason why people see it as quite a transparent kind of thing to say, because if you just have it about the Google thing, then the whole Sonny thing, I do think, kind of derails that. But there is more to it, which is just simply that when Chyna was at kind of her not best, you wouldn't put her on a live mic. Because her relationship with the company was so fractious that they wouldn't be able to trust her to do it.
And I still do understand. I know it's not popular, but I do understand that they've not felt comfortable enough that they could put her in front of a live mic, and that's sad. And I wish it was different for her. And as we're going to talk about, because we're going to really make this about the career of Chyna today, there's not going to be any shag, marry, kill at the end of this.
No,
it's not going to be here this week. Because it's just not the time. It's not the time to do it. But
and we are starting with sort of talking about troubles, but we want this more than anything else to be a positive wrestle culture, and just looking back on what Chyna should be remembered for, which is kind of her in-ring work and the kind of stuff she put in place for the women who followed her.
Yeah, it's funny because one of my friends, a guy I can know on Facebook and spoke to for a couple of years, I didn't realise until this morning that he actually worked with Chyna, and he was part of her website team and all that sort of stuff. And also I hadn't spoken to her, but I'd spoken to her team a wee bit about doing an interview with her at some point that wasn't able to get it sorted. I had ideas to do a tour with her, like a Q&A tour involving some other people, which sadly can't happen now. So I feel like I have a little bit of an investment in her as a character. And I think for me, like, you know, like I did a tour with Sting last year and did a tour with Scott Steiner this year. And I think when I do these type of things, I mean, Sting was obviously like, people love Sting. But with Scott Steiner as an example, one of the things that I wanted to do when I brought him over was kind of like, not rehabilitate his image, but like show the good that he has. And I think that's what I was really looking forward to doing with Chyna, was that instead of having her be like this woman that has troubles and did porn and all this sort of stuff, I wanted to have her be part of a show with other people where we would just be like, do you know what? Let's get you a gun thing and let's shoot your little pyros and let's just make you happy and have like a fun time.
That's the thing. She must have, of all the people in the Attitude Era, a treasure trove of stories. Not only was she hanging around with like kind of some of the biggest hellraisers on the roster, but just her unique position, being one of the boys, whilst also being, the most intimidating woman probably seen.
Yeah, I think the thing that makes me sad is that, and again, maybe it's a selfish thing of me wanting to do a tour with her or interview her, is that I don't really think anybody ever got the good interview with her. I don't think she ever did one where she was relaxed enough.
Did she never do like a long, kind of hour-long shoot or something?
She did a Russo thing, but to me, Russo's unbearable to listen to in those things because he's just like, I swear to God, and you just can't get through it. But she did a U shoot a couple of years ago with Kayfabe Commentaries.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like Sean Oliver, who runs Kayfabe Commentaries, he kind of jokes that that's the worst U shoot he's ever done.
Why?
Because like she brought her pet Chihuahua to it. She wasn't really like, I think she had things going on in her life at that point. I don't think she was, but
whereas
again,
now would be the time when everything.
And my idea with her to bring it over with other people that she knew and she worked with is, I think that what you're saying is, if she was around people she had worked with, they could share stories together, and it would have been a nice experience. But that stuff can happen. But I just want to give you a little bit of a background, so that if I seem like I'm more saddened by this than maybe most people are, or that I'm more affected by it, not that I have any right to be, but those are the reasons that it's a little bit more of a bitter pill for me to swallow today.
It's sad. It's just a really sad thing to have happened.
Yeah, it is. But we're going to celebrate Chyna. I know that, Adam, you've went to the Twitter.
The Twitter.
And,
absolutely. Just asking people, do you have any questions or like favorite memories of Chyna that you just want us to talk about? One of the kind of big questions, I guess, we could close with this, but I think we'll lead with it because it's on a lot of people's minds, because you mentioned it yourself earlier, which is Chyna in the Hall of Fame. So a lot of people have been questioning, will it happen? Yeah. And if it does, who inducts her? Because I've seen some people on Twitter saying that Triple H should do it. No, I'm not sure about that. Just because the public relationship between those two has just been so toxic.
I'd tell you what I would like to see, and I know people are going to go, oh God, I wouldn't want to see this. First of all, I do think it's going to happen.
Yeah, me too.
I'm fairly confident. I think Robert Duffin, who I do Inside the Ropes with, he made a really good point on Twitter this morning that I think should be brought up. Is, we talked about the argument of Sonny and different things like that, and he had said to somebody who had kind of tweeted that at us saying, well, Sonny's in, so how can and Robert had said, if you use if X is in, then Y should be in, that theory will drive you mad.
Yeah,
in a lot of senses. But what I would quite like to see, whether it's right or wrong, is I would like to see Trish and Lita induct her, because they both got to work with her. And then I think the acceptance, now this is going to make people really mad, I want it to be Shawn and Hunter together, and I want them to come out and sort of say, we wish that while Joanie had been with us, that we had been able to mend that fence, and I think it was a bit of everybody's fault that we didn't get to, but she was DX with us, DX started the three of us, and I want it to end with us and her, because I feel like if she wanted the recognition and she wanted the achievements, which is what she wanted it to be, I think having those two guys come out, who were the other part of that thing that she was such a successful part of, I think there's a way to do that if it's done genuinely and it's done in a nice way, that I think people would feel good about that.
I think I think it should be Shawn. I I can imagine Hunter coming out, but just there's some part of me that doesn't want me to hear, as genuine as it might be, doesn't want me to kind of. I just don't want to see, Triple H talk about China, if only just because. Like,
well, maybe he doesn't need to say much.
There's
maybe
been so many allegations between the two. Like, you don't know what's right and what's wrong, and like it's just the backlash against Triple H for saying, I don't want kids Googling, or I don't want kids Googling China and stuff like that. I don't know if there's been too much spin for Triple H to do it and make it feel like in any way not disingenuous.
It probably would feel disingenuous a little bit, but I don't know if Sean on his own coming out and doing it would be a bit jarring.
Do you think?
Well, I just feel like it was the three of them. The three of them were DX. It was those three people, and that's just what I would be up for seeing. But like I say, I would want it to be a case of they're honouring her, and they're acknowledging that there was mistakes on both sides. And that
if WWE is capable of doing that.
If they are, yeah. And I don't know if they are. And maybe we're a minority, I guess, because if you pay $50 to go to a Hall of Fame ceremony, you're kind of buying into the story and the narrative that's being told to you. You're accepting what that is. But I think she will go in though. I think that she deserves it. I think that I've said for a long time, I think that Chyna, in terms of women going into the Hall of Fame, I mean, I think she should have gone in a long time ago.
Yeah.
No offense to Jacqueline, who is. It's hard because like we can sit and go, Jacqueline, like she's going in the Hall of Fame, but like for us, like we've watched, we're WWF fans. Like that was our growing up. You know, we didn't see a lot of it in WCW. We didn't watch World Class. We didn't see her grow up in Texas and do all the stuff there. No. So I get that like sometimes there's more to something, but it just feels like. With a WWE Hall of Fame, like
if you're talking about the legends, the people who have who have worked towards crafting what it is that the mainstream perception of wrestling was, Chyna is one of the chief pillars of that in the Attitude Era. I remember when I started watching, one of the first angles that made me really like incredibly invested, like total belief, no kind of second guessing or anything, was the injury angle with her and Right to Censor.
Ivory, yeah.
Yeah, Ivory breaking her neck with a spike pile driver, and then something terrible happening at the Royal Rumble, and then leading to one of the squashiest of squash matches at WrestleMania 17. I just felt genuine fear for her safety and genuine anger for Right to Censor. I was only a small thing, and it was, I was only just getting into wrestling, but that was one of the first times where I was just like, I wanted to return and kick Ivory's ass so much. And then when it happened to WrestleMania, it was just like, yay! It was just like, for me, I'll always have a huge kind of soft spot for Chyna just because
and it's
one
funny
of those big
that
stories.
It's funny that one of the things that a lot of wrestling fans who had watched her whole rise saw that angle a little bit differently. Saw that as the downfall because she had been involved with men for so long and she'd now been transitioned into the women's stuff. Like for me, I remember the first time I saw Chyna was when she debuted and
throttling Marlena.
Yeah,
I'm so
she would have throttled Melina if she got the chance. But like, because Triple H as Hunter Hearst Helmsley, like he'd went through a lot of managers. He debuted and had Sable on his arm. Then he had a lot of women on his arm, which funny story of his career. And then he had Mr. Perfect. He had Mr. Hughes. All these people, but when Chyna debuted, and I remember, I'm sure she was in the crowd. And Marlena was on the outside when Goldust was facing Hunter, and Chyna's arm just came over the front of Marlena's face, and she just had these guns, and like she looked so physically imposing, and she looked very masculine, which I say because I think it is important at the beginning that she did look masculine. I think people had never really been exposed to a woman like that before.
Certainly not in kind of mainstream culture, and certainly not with people being encouraged to kind of respect her for her kind of non-femininity.
And then at WrestleMania 13, which was the first major pay-per-view that she was a part of, she ragdolled Marlena around on the outside, and like she was just a beast. Like she was like the female Brock Lesnar in a way. Like she was just, you didn't mess with her, and she was a big part, I think, and people don't talk about this as much, is that when the WWF were changing from they were morphing for a long time, going from the kind of cartoony era into Raw is War and all that sort of stuff. Chyna was a massive part of that.
Yeah.
Because she looked different, she felt different, she didn't talk, she had action, she beat up men. Like, she was a big part of that transition and that change. And then as 97 went on, she was a big part of DX. Again, didn't say anything, but they got to make the jokes with her.
She had the big stick.
And then I remember one of the pivotal moments in 1998 was when Shawn Michaels got injured before WrestleMania 14, and he couldn't do the No Way Out in Texas pay-per-view the month before. There was a big 8-man tag. It was like Chainsaw Charlie, Cactus Jack, Owen Hart, and Austin. And it was supposed to be against the Outlaws and DX. And they decided to have Savio Vega be Shawn Michaels' replacement, which, no offense to Savio, but biggest letdown of all time. But
wow,
post-match, they did the angle where Steve Austin was celebrating. Chyna it's on the network. I really encourage you to go and see it. No Way Out of Texas, February 98. And she comes into the ring and she just shoves Austin.
Yeah.
And Austin has this kind of moment where he's like, am I going to stunner you? And then he does. And like, it didn't feel like, I'm not very big on intergender wrestling. It's not really, it makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable in a lot of ways. But this was the payoff. A year's worth of her beating men up and nobody getting to touch her. And Austin stunners her. People went mental. And that's how much she meant, because she was a big character and they held it off. And she headlined a pay-per-view moment with Austin being stunnered. And I think that was a big moment that people don't talk about as much. And then when Triple H was facing Sergeant Slaughter around that time, she was handcuffed.
She was handcuffed to Slaughter. My favorite, you talk about her being a beast. One of my favorite kind of enduring moments, Unforgiven 98, right, when she was suspended above the ring in a cage because Chyna was so dangerous that she could not be. She had to be suspended from a cage above the ring. I thought, and like you could see her, and she bent the bars.
Yep, it was great.
Yeah, and just like constantly like throwing crap in Slaughter's face. I think she threw powder in his face at WrestleMania, something like that. I can't remember the exact thing, but she was just a hellraiser and one of the boys.
And I always remember that in the summer of '98 when DX had become a babyface faction, and she still remained, the kind of arms folded, here to take care of business kind of thing. When DX came out to do the parody of the Nation, she's the one that didn't get involved. She just came out, she was Chyna. Because Chyna's not going to do the funny stuff, but Chyna will be there. And that was what was so great about her, in the sense of like you could see them trying to pop her a little bit. And very rarely would she crack.
Break,
she would never really do it. And then in 98 would go on, and then she turned heel on and joined the corporation.
That's
and
right.
that was around the same time that she famously became the first woman to ever be in a Royal Rumble in 1999, and she won the
Corporate Rumble.
A
lot of people on Twitter, one of some of their favorite memories are Chyna's pioneering moments when she was the first person to do X, first female competitor to do X, and of course, people talk about like Lita and Trish closing out a Raw, but Chyna closed out a Raw as a winner of a little mini Rumble.
She did, and then Vince was in the ring, oiled up to F blah blah blah.
Yeah, Vince McMahon is never in a state of not being at least semi-oiled.
But usually he has a vest on, but this was like topless oiled Vince McMahon. and he's in the ring, and Chyna, like, and to his surprise, eliminates him.
Just hoys him out of the ring.
And he sells it like it's the best thing that's ever happened. I mean, he's just like, what? It's like his family had been kidnapped, which would happen later that year. That he would do on his own.
He'd feud with himself.
But no, and she would turn heel, and then they did that great story where she turned heel on Hunter and joined the corporation. And then WrestleMania 15, which I think WrestleMania 15 is essentially a 3-hour episode of Raw, but done really well, where she reunites with Triple H. And you think they're baby faces.
And then they both
turn on Kane, and they're the heels. And I think one of the things that really needs to be said is that I think Triple H deserves a lot of credit. In some ways he doesn't get sometimes because people go, oh, he was just shagging the boss's daughter and all that sort of stuff. But he was I think between late 99 and early 2001, he was the best guy on the roster. And he's done a lot since then. But I think his act and his character and his development, he owes a lot to Chyna.
Yeah.
She was a huge part of making him successful. And she doesn't get the credit for that. But she deserves it.
You know who else? She really kind of just gave them the benefit just by their association, Eddie Guerrero.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that their on-screen relationship was great. It was like one of the genuinely, like, again, I was getting into it, so like I was, it's still one of the kind of, maybe I'm thinking of it as the best because it's one of the first kind of major relationships I saw. But when I started watching, they were kind of just forming that relationship, and so it seemed like it'd been going on forever.
But what was important about that was that when Eddie Guerrero came into WWF, like, he still had to kind of prove to Vince McMahon and to WWF officials that he could be a sports entertainer.
Yeah,
you know what
and
I mean?
the whole Mamacita.
Yeah, I remember watching Eddie Guerrero in WCW, and I thought he was good, but he wasn't like one of my favorites. And when he got to WWF, I was like, oh, that's cool. He's a radical, whatever. But it was the Chyna Mamacita thing where I was like, this guy.
Backlash 2000, where he'd gone to the prom. And he's just like, we're running late. We got to do your match now, Eddie. And then they just go down to the ring, and the lowrider, he's wearing a tux, takes off everything, takes off his entire tuxedo top apart from the bow tie, wrestles in the bow tie. Chyna's there in her evening gown. Lita at the end strips Chyna of her evening gown, and Chyna just stands there going, "Yeah, I look great."
Yeah,
and it's like, oh, you guys are really adorable. And then she just rubs kind of Eddie Guerrero's title belt again, and he's just like looking at her and just like bashful and can't believe it.
But what made that work as well is he was happy to be the kind of like the feminine role in the relationship in a way.
Yeah.
You know, like which you didn't really see a man do at that point. And another thing that Chyna did at the end of 1998 before she did the whole turning heel thing was Mark Henry was courting her. And but what was important about that is that Chyna in late 98, I think it was late 98, she had facial reconstruction surgery.
She did.
And she had breast implants. And I think a lot of that's got to do with the fact that she was very masculine, and I'm sure that she got a lot of abuse for that. I'm sure we've made jokes about it at some point. You know, we're not any better than that. We've all made jokes about it. But she really feminized her look with maintaining still looking like a beast, but just soften it a little bit. And I think it was quite important that Mark Henry, the character, was going after Chyna, because why would he not want to go for Chyna? You know, Chyna's an attractive woman, blah, blah. You know, they had to put that across in the story, because if not, you're kind of playing up to the, oh, Chyna, you know, don't go near her. And there's a really sweet moment on one of the Raws where I can't remember how it happened, but he won a date with her, and she was like really adverse to doing it. And there's this really sweet moment where like Mark Henry wins it over in a club, and he wants to dance with her, and she doesn't want to dance. And he has these like moves, like he's trying to be really suave. And then she kind of like pops a little bit and just kind of dances back with him a little bit. And seeing that was really fun, because it was like, Chyna likes Mark Henry. And they had this thing. And then, of course, Sammy Baby got involved, which was do you remember this?
Was this, all I know about the whole Chyna Mark Henry thing is she embarrassed him in front of his mum?
Well, he cheated on her. Right. So basically, she got her tranny friend, Sammy Baby.
Yes. I know this.
To teach
Sorry, I didn't know the name Sammy Baby, but now that you've...
Well, her name was Sammy, and then he was making out with her, and then he went to put his... You know, because as any gentleman does, when you're kissing a lady, you immediately put your hand to her groin.
Of course.
That's the first move, right?
Yeah. A kiss is the open invitation to go straight to second base.
Straight to the groinal. And
yes.
And he put his hand down to the groin and realized that it wasn't a pie. It was
a real WTF moment.
It was a toad in the hole. And then she famously went, "What? I'm Sammy, baby," and did this thing. And then and Mark Henry's mum was in the front row. But and I'm going on about it, but like it was just another thing that made her more accepted, made her more endearing as a character, because you got to see a bit more of her. And then in 1999, when she was the heel with Triple H, in the summer of 99, she became the #1 contender to the WWF Championship.
She sure did.
And for a week, it was advertised SummerSlam 99, Jesse the Body Ventura, the referee, for Stone Cold versus Chyna.
Yeah.
And it was mad. And then there was a great part of the story where Triple H is when I think it was Shawn Michaels was the commissioner, and he was giving Chyna an opportunity to be the number one contender. I think it was Triple H, Undertaker, and Chyna in a triple threat.
Yeah.
And Austin helped Chyna win.
That's it, yeah.
But Triple H didn't want Chyna in the match, and he famously said to her,
"You're just a girl.
You're just a girl." And that was great, like, because it worked, because Triple H was being the chauvinist. Chyna proved him wrong. And in the end, she wasn't in the match, but...
No, in the end. But, you know, like, and rumors are rumors are rumors are rumors, but, and you should only kind of give them as much credence as they deserve. But they're, you know, one of the biggest kind of shocking plans that almost happened, you know, we've done a video about it, was that Chyna for a time was heavily considered as like, what happens if we put the belt on her? And what would have happened if they put the belt on her? I mean, you know, you don't have the most faith in kind of late 90s WWE to have it not be just a total farce.
I think I think it would have been the wrong move. I think that going on to the next topic is her winning the Intercontinental Championship from Jeff Jarrett in 1999, which I thought was great. You know, I know Jim Ross has said that he wasn't crazy about Chyna. Like, he liked her and everything, but he wasn't crazy about the idea of her being a male-dominated champion, essentially, because the IC title had always been men that held it. Yeah. I thought that worked, but I don't quite think her beating Steve Austin would have worked.
I mean, there's certainly an argument that it would devalue the women's championship. Because you want those two things to be as equals, but then again,
there's a great clip actually on YouTube, and I'm going to post it on the official WhatCulture account, and it's from a Canadian television show in 1999. It must have been about March or April. And it's Sable, Deborah, and Chyna. And at this point, Sable had become a bit big for her bridges. She'd got Playboy.
She turned heel by this point.
Yeah, she was heel, but in real life, like, she thought she was a bigger star than the WWF.
Sure.
And she was in Playboy and all that sort of stuff. And anyway, one of the fans in this kind of TV show asked Chyna, you know, why have you not gone after the women's championship? And Chyna said, well, you know, first of all, it took me like a second to get it. and said other stuff. And then there's a really, really tense interaction with Sable and Chyna, with Deborah in the middle kind of trying to not say anything, where Sable says, you know, I think you're actually just devaluing the women's division, and we work for the same company, and maybe you shouldn't be devaluing what I do. And then Chyna says, listen, just because you got enhancements to get you where you are doesn't mean that I need to do the same. And then Sable says, well, you're not 100% natural, honey, let's be honest. And they have this back and forth, but it's kind of interesting because at that point, Chyna is essentially saying in real life that, you know, me going for that title doesn't make any sense because my character would annihilate your character. It's not believable.
Well, it's only not believable if you don't, like... I would love to see, obviously Chyna left the WWE, WWF in auspicious circumstances. Rumors was that the belt was taken with her, whatever. But I would she was women's champion, crowned at WrestleMania. I would have loved to have seen her run with that for like 2-3 years and then finally have someone knock her off. Because if the division isn't strong enough that someone can unseat the champion, then just don't have the champion unseated. You're right. Make it make logical sense. And if she's going to be the beast at the top of the division, that's fine. Just, people step up, they can't handle it, so they step back down. And then that means eventually when someone does step forward and has either the technical ability to fell her or whatever needs to happen, I think you've got a great story in it. It's just her reign with the women's title was so short that you just never really it did feel anomalous compared to the rest of her career.
I do think the division was too weak when she won it for her to be. So going back, she won the IC title from Jeff Jarrett, which I remember watching that stuff where he was beating up women and stuff, and
oh my goodness.
I think the reason it worked is because they had the plan that eventually a woman's going to unseat him. That's
in a good housekeeping match.
Good housekeeping match, yeah. And she wins it, and I'm not going to lie, I remember when she won that belt, I was really happy because she unseated Jeff Jarrett. She proved him wrong. I'm not as crazy. I know some people are, and I'm not saying it's bad. I wasn't as crazy about the Chris Jericho China feud as some people are.
Oh, really?
It just
I
didn't.
really enjoyed it.
It was fine for me, but it didn't. I don't know. I felt like once she won the belt, it was harder to make her have a reign. Like I felt like it was a bit jarring for me.
In what sense? In that it would be damaging for men to be in the same ring and not walk away with the title.
I just think that when it got to a point where China was just part of the men's division, it didn't work for me at that point. I felt like the journey of her getting there was really good. It was really exciting. But when it just got to a point, because the thing was, China wasn't the best wrestler. She was.
No, that's true.
She was a great character, and I think once you sort of put her in a division, and a lot of the character stuff was taken away, and she's just wrestling, and that's all you're getting. You're taking away some of the uniqueness of her and some of the strengths that she has. So for me, like that didn't really work. But then as soon as Eddie came in and she did stuff with Eddie, I was on board again. And then there's I'm sure that she was at one point the IC champion, and Eddie like rolled her up and pinned her.
Eddie rolled her up, yeah.
Which again, great. And then Eddie cheats on her, and she's like gutted. And then people don't talk about this a lot, but there was the story in the summer of 2000 where she DDT'd Stephanie. And they had a kind of very briefly touched on Triple H used to be with Chyna.
And now
he's with Stephanie on screen.
Wow, it's just a slight bleed onto the main.
But it didn't last, and it was quickly forgotten about. And then the stuff that you were talking about, she does the women's angle at the Royal Rumble, comes back at WrestleMania, wins the title. And then I think I know she fought Lita at Judgment Day.
Judgment Day, yeah.
And that was her last one.
That was pretty much it, yeah.
And so
I'm
what
sure
happened?
she wrestled on TV, but...
She didn't.
But did she not?
Judgment Day was the last one that she had. But then because her contract was due to finish in November of 2001, and that was May. And the rumours are that Dave Meltzer had reported, and a couple other people, that she wanted, when her contract came up for renewal, she wanted more money, and she wanted to wrestle men again, and she wanted to be in matches with The Rock and stuff like that. And they just didn't see her in that role anymore. She'd done Playboy and had one of the highest selling copies of all time. But kind of like Sable, she decided to go off and do other things and hope that her star would continue to rise elsewhere. But the thing is, once she leaves WWF and she can no longer be called Chyna and she's Joanie Laurer, then it's not the same thing. You know, it's like when Sable became Rena Mero. It just didn't have the same cachet to it.
Plus, Chyna, she was who she was because of that, sports lens that you looked at her through. Like, in terms of kind of like, being a kind of big kind of otherwise entertainment personality, she was, she was iconic, but it was through that kind of lens of, and now she's going to kick someone's ass, that people really kind of were drawn to her. Again, especially watching her smash a sink over Jeff Jarrett's head.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's kind of sad talking about all this stuff, but because I just wish anyway. It's so she went to New Japan for a little bit.
She did,
which I was not aware of, but you had told me that
she wrestled for New Japan. Her first, she started off refereeing, and then she did a lot of tag stuff with Shane. Just looking on Cage Match, his name was Shane. I can't quite remember his full name, but he was known as Shane, blonde guy.
Not Shane McMahon.
Not Shane McMahon.
Although I always do remember one of my favourite things, and this might have been before you started watching, but when Shane McMahon was first a character in WWF, and he was in the corporation, he used to come out on Chyna's arm. And Chyna would be like... And he'd be like doing a mad. I know if you're listening to this, you can't see what I'm doing. You just hear me saying he's like. But Chyna would be stoic and kind of still, and then Shane would be doing little jives.
He does that little kind of.
And they made a really fun friendship. And actually, one of my favorite Chyna memories that I want to get in before we move on. I went to a WWF UK pay-per-view called No Mercy in 1999. Not the good No Mercy in 1999, but the UK house show version. And they decided to split the roster, so we only got half the roster. And the show was less. I mean, one of the matches was Gilbert versus Tiger Ali Singh, who were not regular TV characters.
No.
So, but the main event of that show was a triple threat match for the WWF title: Steve Austin, Triple H, and The Undertaker. Triple H and Undertaker, both members of the corporate ministry. One of my favorite theme tunes of all time. And Chyna was on the outside. Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler were the commentary team. So the match finished, Steve Austin retained his title. That's what happened. But what happened after it went off the air is a memory that I really treasure to this day, which is that Undertaker leaves and Triple H is in the ring. X-Pac was there because he'd fought Shane McMahon earlier that night. So X-Pac and Austin and Errol...
X-Pac?
X-Pac.
X-Pac.
I just say it that way.
It's just weird.
Because I think X-Pac sounds weird in my accent.
It's like it's got an R in X-Pac.
Yeah, but I can't. My accent can't do that. It's either Pac or Poc.
X-Pac.
So X-Pac. But
sorry, just
I'll say Sean Waltman.
Yeah,
so
say Sean Waltman.
So say Sean Waltman would come out. It's like when you say ass. It's weird because you get a posh accent.
Mr. Ass.
No, that you kick his ass. It's because you get a posh accent.
You prefer ass.
Yeah.
Mr. Ass. I'm an ass man.
No, like if you say kick somebody's arse.
Kick someone's ass.
Yeah, that's
Anyway.
Anyway.
Kick someone's ass. Ass.
So
X-Pac.
Sean Waltman and Steve Austin and Errol Hebner were all drinking beers, having a beer bash. It was really fun. And then Triple H and Shane have both been stunnered various times and Bronco Bustered and all this sort of stuff. So Triple H and Shane are lying in the ring, decimated. And Chyna gets in the ring and she sort of very slowly picks both of them up. And she has them both standing on her arm. And she just looks at both of them and just drops them and just walks off. And
she was just great at the little moments of comedy, wasn't she?
And she would do those little things, and she was funny. Anyway, so she did New Japan, and then I guess we need to...
Well, I just, saying like she did New Japan, like a lot of the stuff she did was tag matches. I didn't know that the one-on-one match she did in New Japan was her versus Masahiro Chono. And if you're listening to this and you don't know who Masahiro Chono is, he's one of the superstars of Japanese wrestling. Won the G1 Climax 5 times.
I won it twice, but
of course, obviously, I'm working on my first. But yeah, they wrestled
your
in
first climax.
One day, Dad. And they wrestled, not in kind of but like I don't want to draw attention to it. I do feel I need to clear that up. Like one day, like I'll make it, Dad. Is what you want your parents to be proud of you. Not I'm gonna. Oh dear. Anyway, they wrestled an 11-minute match, and it was great. Yeah.
Funnily enough, the next thing we're going to talk about is porn.
Oh.
So Chyna did the porno, and so in Chyna's whole career, she also, we're never going to know if this was 100% legit, but there's always a rumor that there was a early consideration, for her to be in Terminator 3 in the female role. But after the New Japan stuff is kind of when she went a bit off the rails. Which is when she did the pornography with Sean Waltman. They did One Night in China. They were both taking a lot of drugs. They were both, not in favor with WWE.
No,
they were in a relationship. They were a couple for a while. And so she did that film, and then she didn't do any more porn at that point. But that seemed to stick with her. Like people were, and yeah, people seem to kind of have that as like we were reading it this morning. Some news sites were picking it up as Chyna.
She's a wrestler and porn star.
Well,
I genuinely don't know whether or not that isn't something that she would want in her obituary, because a lot of people associate doing porn with living a troubled life and hitting rock bottom and stuff like that, which is not necessarily a fair comparison. I know when you're doing one industry and you go into porn, a lot of people see that as like a downward slide. But Chyna has gone on the record saying that she has always loved the adult industry and has always wanted to be a part of it. So lots of guys do. Bubba Ray said he wanted to be a rock star, wrestler, and a porn star. A lot of people want to get into the industry, and she's an award-winning pornographic actress, so she was good at it.
I have trouble believing that she means that. And I have no basis for what I'm saying. I just feel like when she did it, she was going through a lot of stuff, and when she did it again, it was that there wasn't that many options out there for her to do other stuff. I'm not saying that she didn't enjoy it or she didn't have fun doing it, but I would feel like
it's possible. I guess what I'm saying is it's possible that she was doing porn whilst concurrently suffering from substance-related kind of mental problems and depression and stuff like that, and those things. That one might be exacerbated by the other because, the porn industry, I'm sure it's very enabling when it comes to kind of substance abuse and stuff like that, but is it possible for those things to just happen concurrently and not necessarily as a consequence?
Yeah, that's true. And so she did the film in 2004. She kind of went quiet for a long time. She did do other porn and stuff, but she went to TNA in 2011 very briefly.
Did.
I showed you some of the stuff
you
earlier
did. You
on.
showed me that stuff this morning, which I hadn't seen.
So yeah, she came in as the mystery partner for Kurt Angle against Jeff Jarrett and his former wife Karen. She looked pretty decent. She looked older than she did in WWF, obviously, but
It was 10 years on, yeah.
But she did look different in the sense that, she had lost the muscle mass that she had before.
Yeah.
But she obviously had the enhanced breasts, so that was there. It didn't look exactly like the Chyna that we remember, but
No.
you're not going to get that when you've not been wrestling for a decade. But I thought that as an angle and as a match and as a kind of fun little storyline that it worked.
Yeah,
and I thought it was quite kind of cute the way they did it.
They ended it with she ended. The finish was the beginning of the finish was her hitting on Karen Jarrett. I want to use this the words they use, a DDT style move, otherwise known
resembled a pedigree.
Otherwise known as a pedigree. Yeah, she hit a pedigree to Karen Jarrett as a very cute little FU to WWE.
Yeah.
And then they locked them in dual ankle locks. Her and Kurt locked.
Yeah.
Karen and Jeff.
And it did. I don't think it moved a lot of numbers in terms of. But then TNA never really moved numbers. They had Ric Flair, Hulk Hogan, Kurt Angle, Mick Foley.
Yeah.
So adding Chyna's probably not going to do much. But I think that for me, I remember at the time I wasn't watching TNA and I checked it out for her. So it did the job.
Job done.
That didn't really last too long. I don't know what reason that was. And then obviously we talked earlier about her recent bid for kind of reconciliation. In terms of, I don't want to make this sound that we're just being really sort of well, she's dead, so we need to be really nice about her. But there is a lot of nice stuff to say.
It's not hyperbolic to call her a pioneer because there's so many things that she did first.
It's funny, I put a thing out on one of my Facebook pages this morning and I'd said the word pioneer and a couple of people argued that she wasn't, and they said, how can she be a pioneer? And I think what people misunderstand is she was not a pioneer of the women's division. She was not, but she was a pioneer for the roles that women would then be able to get in wrestling.
Yeah.
Because before you had a valet or you had a wrestler, she parlayed it into.
You had you had people like Alundra Blaze and stuff, but again, it was kept very, very separate. Mm-hmm. You are the best of the women's division, whereas she bled over into the whole mainstream top tier.
I would argue that women, funnily enough, the two women that I was going to mention as examples are the only other two women to ever have appeared in the Royal Rumble match. But Beth Phoenix and Awesome Kong / Karma.
Yeah.
I see part of what she did in them.
Oh God, Beth Phoenix, like her Amazon stuff, especially when Chyna was ruling the women's division, she started dressing kind of OTT glamorous. That's all over Beth Phoenix.
Yeah, and then Awesome Kong, she's obviously a different shape and stuff like that. But in terms of a woman who, she came in and she did her move to Dolph Ziggler at the Rumble and stuff like that. That's all off of Chyna being able to do what she did. And I'm not going to sit and say Chyna was a great wrestler. She wasn't. But then my favourite wrestler is Hulk Hogan, and he wasn't a great wrestler.
She put butts in the seats.
She did. She was a very popular character.
She was an attraction.
She made money for that company.
Mm-hmm.
She made more money for that company than a lot of stars that people talk about today. You guys like The Godfather or Gangrel or even the APA. I think Chyna drew more money than they did. And it's funny that Chyna, who drew the sort of interest that she did, gets no recognition, but yet JBL gets a ton of it. And I'm not saying that I know he had the SmackDown reign as champion and stuff because Triple H didn't want to work Tuesdays, as Paul Heyman would say. But yeah, I think Chyna's legacy. I was going to ask you this, but I'll just go first. I think Chyna's legacy in wrestling is going to be misunderstood, troubled, pioneer, and ultimately, I think, an underrated part of an era. I think she deserves more credit. She was a huge part of D-Generation X.
I think her legacy is Her legacy is just that personality and drawing power transcends gender. Your personality doesn't have to be feminine or masculine. You can blur the lines, and whether or not wrestling and titles and divisions and all that stuff, you are not bound by your gender if you want to become an iconic megastar in professional wrestling. And Chyna proved that beyond a shadow of a doubt.
She did. So, yeah, that's pretty much today's podcast. I wish we could give you some funny stuff, but, well, I mean, Adam wants to climax with his father, so that's funny.
Oh,
but,
just...
apart from that...
I can't... It's been... I'm having a sad morning, Kenny.
We all are. Yeah, it is sad, and yeah, it is. There's no way around it. But I think that it's been good to talk about Chyna today. Good to talk about her accomplishments and the stuff that she was able to do in wrestling. And I'm not usually one of the people that does a lot of hashtags, but I think Chyna for Hall of Fame 2017 is definitely one that should happen. Not even even if you're someone who doesn't put a lot of stock in the Hall of Fame, and I don't blame you if that's the way you are, I feel like Joanie Chyna would want to be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
That's clear from the last year of her life that's what she would want. So
she values her time with that company.
They owe it to her to put her in there. You have been Adam from WhatCulture.
You have been Kenny from WhatCulture. Yep. Is this a two Ronnies little sign off we're doing?
Oh, don't, because he's dead as well.
Oh, God, it's just the world.
So if both of us can survive till next week on planet Earth, we will be here for another Wrestle Culture.
If you have your more favourite memories of Chyna, send them in through to at WhatCulture WWE, at Adam the Blompier, and at Kenny McIntosh 1985.
Kenny MC 1985.
Oh, I got it wrong. Send them through to at Kenny McIntosh 1985 anyway. I'll set that up. We'll make a little clone.
Or send it through to bad photos of Adam B.
Oh.
Or Adam B's nipples.
I'm wearing the same top, actually. I did when I interviewed Scott Steiner. How do they look?
I can't see them.
I
saw them this morning, sadly, but I can't see them.
Oh, it's because we were sharing a hotel room.
Yeah, it was. We were.
It's a good time.
It's done now. We don't need to share the hotel room anymore. We've checked out.
I woke Kenny up while wearing Union Jack pants.
Well, let's clarify. I was fully dressed and ready to leave because I was a good friend and I was going to get him a bacon roll.
You'd seen off your gigantic bottle of Iron Brew that you keep by bedside. Absolutely no joking.
So I'm looking out the window, just to see what's going on in Newcastle in the morning. And I turn round. Now, if you're listening to this, you can't see what I'm doing, but go onto the YouTube channel and just click the end of this video to see. I turn round and Adam has one leg on his bed in the smallest Union Jack boxers I've ever seen. Mm-hmm. And he's got this pose.
Of pure pride and conquest.
And I left immediately before I was conquested. So, God
save our gracious queen.
God save our gracious... Well, your queen.
So that has been Wrestle Culture. It's nice to just end on a little moment of us hating each other. It wouldn't be an episode of Wrestle Culture without it. And yeah, thanks very much for listening, guys. We'll see you next week.